the injured child on the highway, and the shocking conspiracy behind it, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The rain poured down in relentless sheets, each drop slamming against the windshield. The sky was pitch black, not a single star in sight. The highway stretched out, empty and silent, except for the deep rumble of a heavy truck rolling through the darkness. Thomas Grayson, a former police officer turned truck driver, gripped the steering wheel tightly. He was used to long solo hauls, but something about this night unsettled him, a creeping feeling as if someone was watching. Suddenly his headlights swept over something on the road. A small figure, stumbling forward, bare feet caked in mud. "A child." Thomas reacted on instinct. He slammed the brakes, tires screeched, skidding across the rain-slicked pavement. The truck shook violently before grinding to a halt, just a few yards from the child. His heart pounded. Jumping out of the cab, he rushed through the downpour. The girl in front of him couldn't have been more than 10 years old, small, trembling, soaked through in a tattered shirt. But the most alarming thing wasn't her appearance. It was the way she clutched her stomach, blood seeping through her fingers. Thomas knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, kid, are you okay?" She looked up at him, eyes wide with terror. Her lips quivered as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. "Dear God," Thomas muttered, as he saw blood trickling between her small fingers. There was no time to hesitate. He scooped her up and carried her into the cab, where the truck's heater could at least keep her from shivering. Stripping off his jacket, he wrapped it around her, then grabbed his phone and dialed 911. 911. "I need help. I found a young girl seriously injured on Highway 12. She's losing a lot of blood. I need an ambulance immediately." A steady female voice came through the line. "Can you confirm the victim's identity?" Thomas glanced down. The girl, still trembling, whispered weakly, Emma Carter." The line went dead silent. Thomas frowned. "Hello? Are you still there?" A few seconds passed before the dispatcher's voice returned, this time laced with tension. "Please hold. We are handling it." Hold? Thomas didn't like that. This girl was bleeding out. There was no time to wait. Without a second thought, he slammed the truck into gear and sped toward the nearest hospital. Then, headlights flared in his mirror. His truck barreled through the storm, windshield wipers working furiously against the torrential rain. Thomas gritted his teeth, hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Emma whimpered, her tiny frame shivering, her wide eyes filled with fear. Through the rearview mirror, Thomas saw it. A black SUV was tailing him. Its high beams flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. A clear message. "Pull over now." "They're not going to give up that easily," Thomas muttered, scanning the road ahead. Emma clutched his sleeve, her voice barely above a whisper. "They have guns." She hadn't even finished speaking when, bang! A gunshot rang out, the bullet slamming into the truck's cargo hold, leaving behind a scorched hole. Thomas immediately yanked the steering wheel to the right. The truck veered dangerously, nearly crashing into the guardrail. His breathing was sharp and fast, adrenaline surging through his veins. The SUV accelerated, pushing forward until it was nearly side by side with the truck. Thomas stole a glance. Through the rain-streaked window, a man with a cold, expressionless face rolled down his window, a handgun raised, aimed directly at him. Son of a... Thomas acted fast, scanning for an escape. Up ahead, barely visible through the downpour, a narrow dirt road cut into the woods. There was no other choice. He jerked the wheel hard. Bam! The truck shot off the highway, tires grinding through deep mud and snapping fallen branches as it barreled down the slick, uneven path. The SUV hesitated only for a second before following. The rain kept hammering down. The dirt road was a mess of sludge and potholes, making the truck shudder with each impact. Emma was nearly thrown from her seat. Thomas reached out, grabbing her just in time. "Hold on tight, kid." Behind them, the SUV struggled through the mud, its tires kicking up sludge and debris. Another shot rang out, a bullet whizzing past, shattering the left side mirror. Glass shards sprayed into the cab. Thomas clenched his jaw, eyes darting ahead for an escape. Up ahead, the road was blocked by a shallow but fast-moving creek. A small wooden bridge stretched across it, looking old and fragile. "We won't make it," Emma whispered. "Trust me." Thomas floored the gas. Boom. The truck surged forward, hitting the bridge at full speed. The moment the front tires touched the wooden planks, a loud crack echoed through the storm. The bridge was collapsing. There was no turning back. Thomas slammed the accelerator to the floor. The truck lurched, its back wheels barely clearing the bridge before the entire structure crumbled into the rushing water below. The SUV had no chance to stop. Crash. It plowed straight into the creek, the metal frame crunching as it smashed against the rocks. Its wheels spun uselessly in the water, the engine roaring in vain. In the rearview mirror, Thomas saw the men inside scrambling, cursing, trying to escape their sinking vehicle. But he didn't stop. He pressed the gas pedal, pushing forward, leaving his pursuers behind, trapped in the raging water. "You okay?" he asked, his voice still tight with adrenaline. Emma nodded, her eyes still wide with fear, but she was alive. Thomas exhaled, his grip on the wheel loosening slightly. But he knew this was only the beginning. Thomas stood in the hospital's interrogation room, arms crossed, his cold gaze locked onto Detective Hannah Brooks. She placed a thick file on the table, flipping through the pages slowly, as if deciding what to tell him first. "Emma Carter is not an isolated case," Hannah said, her voice heavy with the weight of the truth. She slid a photograph toward Thomas. It was another young girl, around Emma's age, with long brown hair and terrified eyes. 3 weeks ago, another girl escaped from a facility just like the one Emma was in. She was recaptured 2 days later, but when the police arrived at the location, the entire site had been wiped clean. No evidence, no bodies, no trace of what happened to her. A chill ran down Thomas's spine. "Are you saying there are multiple facilities?" Hannah nodded and pushed another document toward him. "Based on data collected from missing person reports, there are at least 5 suspected locations across the state, and we believe the organization behind this is not just some street-level crime syndicate. We're talking about a highly sophisticated network with powerful backers." She pointed to a name on the file. "Whitmore Medical Center." Thomas's heart pounded as he read it. "Wait. Whitmore Medical? That's one of the most prestigious hospitals in the country." Hannah's expression darkened. "Prestige is just a facade. These hospitals are the perfect cover for illegal operations. Organ transplants performed by licensed doctors, and children like Emma, they're nothing more than commodities." A sickening knot formed in Thomas's stomach. He recalled the scar on Emma's abdomen, the haphazard stitches. If this is happening in a hospital that big, why hasn't anyone investigated it? Hannah smirked bitterly. "Who said no one has?" She opened another file, this one filled with a long list of names. Everyone who ever tried to expose Whitmore vanished. Journalists, cops, even doctors who once worked there. Their records erased from the system. Some committed suicide, some died in car accidents, and some simply disappeared without a trace. Thomas clenched his fists. "So if I keep digging into this, I'll disappear too?" Hannah met his gaze, unwavering. "Not just you. Anyone connected to this case is a target, including Emma." The hospital was eerily quiet at night. Fluorescent lights cast a pale, sterile glow over the white walls. The rain had slowed outside, but the wind still howled through the long, empty hallways. Thomas moved quickly, his heartbeat hammering in his chest. Emma was gone. Impossible. He had just left her in the hospital room 30 minutes ago. Detective Hannah Brooks, leading the investigation, rushed into the hallway, her hand instinctively reaching for her gun. Her sharp eyes scanned the corridor as she gripped her Glock. "They moved faster than I expected," she muttered through gritted teeth. "How the hell did they get in without anyone noticing?" Thomas asked, tension thick in his voice. A cold shiver ran down his spine. "Where's security? Where are the two officers?" Hannah grabbed her radio. "Security team, report in." Silence. The two exchanged a knowing glance. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This had been planned from the start. Thomas shoved open the door to the security office, but what he saw made his blood run cold. The two officers assigned to guard Emma were sprawled on the floor. Blood seeped from head wounds pooling onto the pristine white tiles. There were no gunshots. Whoever did this used silencers or blunt force. Hannah knelt down, checking for a pulse. They're alive, but unconscious, attacked from behind. Thomas turned to the security monitors, his eyes darting across the screens. "Maybe we can see what happened." He rewound the footage, eyes locked onto the screen. The hallway was quiet. Then, suddenly, a shadow moved. A man in a long coat, face obscured by a hat, stepped into the frame. He stopped directly in front of Emma's room. Then, static. The feed cut out for 3 seconds. When it returned, Emma was gone. Hannah's jaw tightened. They disabled the cameras. Someone inside the hospital is working with them. Thomas's body tensed. Where the hell are they taking her? Hannah hesitated, then her eyes widened in realization. Not to kill her. If they wanted her dead, they had plenty of chances. They didn't take them. That means... Thomas swallowed hard. He's still valuable to them. They sprinted toward the hospital parking garage. The overhead lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the concrete. The air smelled of oil and something else, something sharp and sterile. At the far end, a white ambulance was pulling away, moving too fast. "Is that a hospital vehicle?" Thomas narrowed his eyes, but then he spotted something off. "No unit number," Hannah muttered. "A fake ambulance." "Get in!" she shouted, diving into the driver's seat of her SUV. Thomas barely had time to slam the door shut before the engine roared to life. The ambulance had reached the exit. A security guard stepped forward to check it. But instead of stopping, the vehicle sped up. Damn. The guard was thrown to the ground, bones crunching on impact. "They'll kill anyone in their way," Hannah growled, pressing the gas pedal. "We can't lose them." The chase was on. For 20 minutes, they pursued the fake ambulance as it weaved through city streets before turning onto a deserted road. They're not heading toward any medical facility, Hannah realized. Thomas felt his pulse quicken. They're taking her somewhere no one will find. Thomas rewound the security footage a few minutes, his eyes locked on the screen, analyzing every frame. The hallway remained still, empty. Then, suddenly, a shadow emerged. A man in a long coat, his face mostly hidden under a hat, stepped into the patient area. He walked straight to Emma's room. Then, the screen flickered. For 3 seconds, the feed went completely dark. When the video resumed, Emma was gone. Hannah's expression darkened as she turned to Thomas. "They disabled the cameras. Someone inside this hospital is working with them." Tension coiled in Thomas's muscles. "Where the hell are they taking her?" Hannah hesitated, then her eyes widened. "Not to kill her?" "What do you mean?" "If they wanted her dead, they had plenty of chances. But they didn't take them. That means..." Thomas swallowed hard. "She's still valuable to them." They sprinted toward the hospital parking garage. The dim neon lights flickered, casting eerie shadows along the concrete floor. The air was thick with the scent of oil, something burned, and an unmistakable tinge of antiseptic. In the far corner, a white ambulance was rolling away fast. "That a hospital unit?" Thomas squinted, but something was off. "No unit number," Hannah muttered. "A fake ambulance." "Get in, now!" Hannah shouted, bolting toward her SUV. Thomas barely had time to jump into the passenger seat before the engine roared to life. The ambulance reached the hospital gate. A security guard stepped forward, raising his hand for it to stop. But instead of stopping, it accelerated. Bam! The guard was thrown to the pavement, the sickening crack of bones echoing in the air. "They're willing to kill." Hannah's grip on the wheel tightened. "You can't lose them." She slammed her foot on the gas. The chase was on. For over 20 minutes, they pursued the fake ambulance as it weaved through the city streets before veering onto a deserted road. "They're not heading to any medical facility," Hannah realized. Thomas's pulse quickened. "They're taking her somewhere no one will find." Just as they were about to close the distance, something terrifying happened. From the shadows, another SUV appeared, barreling straight toward them. "Shit, hold on." Thomas yanked the wheel. Their SUV skidded violently, nearly tipping over. The incoming vehicle missed them by inches before swerving around and falling into pursuit behind them. "They've got an entire kill squad," Hannah growled. Up ahead, the ambulance vanished around a curve. "They're buying time for the other vehicle to take us out." Thomas knew they were being boxed in. If they didn't shake the tailing SUV, they'd never catch up to Emma. Hannah's sharp gaze locked onto the road ahead. A narrow iron bridge, just wide enough for one vehicle at a time. "I have an idea. It's crazy." Thomas glanced at her. "Crazy is normal for me. What is it?" Hannah took a deep breath, then slammed the brakes. The pursuing SUV was too close to react. It surged forward, nearly colliding with them. At that exact moment, Hannah yanked the wheel, swinging the rear of their SUV hard to the side. Smash! Their vehicle struck the pursuing SUV head-on, sending it careening off the road. The black SUV tumbled down the embankment, rolling over before crashing into a tree. Roadblock cleared. Thomas immediately turned back to the road. The ambulance was speeding toward an old industrial district. "You're almost there." Hannah pressed the gas pedal harder. "Let's get Emma before it's too late." Up ahead, a massive steel gate creaked open, revealing an abandoned warehouse. The ambulance disappeared inside. They had reached the end of the road. And inside, a horrifying secret awaited them. Hannah's SUV roared as it sped toward the abandoned warehouse. The massive iron gate slammed shut just as the ambulance disappeared inside. Hannah tightened her grip on the wheel, her eyes locked on the target. "They're trying to trap us out here," Thomas muttered, scanning their surroundings. Then, headlights blazed to life in the darkness. "Shit, it's an ambush." Two black SUVs shot out from either side of the warehouse, boxing them in. A gun barrel emerged from one of the windows. Flying. The windshield exploded. Hannah ducked, yanking the wheel hard. Their SUV tilted dangerously, nearly flipping over. Thomas lunged, grabbing the pistol strapped to Hannah's side, flicked off the safety, and thrust his arm out the window. Bang, bang. Two precise shots. One of the gunmen slumped back, clutching his shoulder. Their SUV swerved, lost control, and crashed into the rusted wall of the warehouse. Hannah didn't hesitate. She floored the gas pedal, aiming straight for the gate. Crash. The SUV plowed through, its tires screeching as it skidded across the damp concrete floor. Thomas braced himself as the vehicle came to a jarring halt. Ahead, the ambulance sat abandoned. The back doors were wide open. But Emma was nowhere in sight. Thomas jumped out, gun still in hand. The warehouse was eerily silent, the dim, flickering lights barely cutting through the darkness. The acrid scent of antiseptic mixed with something metallic. Blood. Hannah drew her Glock and motioned for Thomas to move in. The cavernous space was divided by long, hanging plastic sheets. Thomas pushed forward, navigating through a maze of stainless steel tables, surgical tools scattered everywhere. Then, footsteps echoed in the distance. Thomas and Hannah froze. A shadow emerged from behind the plastic curtain. A middle-aged man, silver-haired, clad in a white lab coat. Dr. Victor Sloan. Hannah's face twisted with disgust. Sloan, she muttered, seething. Once hailed as a brilliant surgeon, Sloan had vanished from the medical world years ago, and now here he was, smirking as if he had been expecting them. "You're a little late," he mused, his voice calm, almost amused. Thomas raised his gun. "Where is she?" Sloan chuckled, taking a slow step back. "Why don't you find out for yourself?" Suddenly, darkness. The entire warehouse went black. A chill crawled down Thomas's spine. It was a trap. "Stay close," Hannah ordered, flipping on the tactical light attached to her gun. The dim beam swept through the suffocating darkness, casting warped shadows against the walls. Thomas moved carefully, forcing himself to steady his breathing. Then, a quick. Hannah whirled around, gun raised, nothing but metal tables. "They're playing mind games with us," Thomas muttered. "Then let's end the game." Hannah lifted her gun. Bang! She fired at the electrical panel. Zap! The emergency lights snapped on, flooding the room with an eerie red glow. And then they saw a row of hospital beds, each encased in thick glass. Inside, children. More than 10 of them, Emma among them, lay on operating tables, IVs in their arms. Some still breathing, some motionless. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered. Rage ignited in Thomas's chest. They were prepping them for organ harvesting. Then, a beeping sound. Sloan checked his wristwatch. "Time's up," he said. The metal door behind them slammed shut. Above them, vents hissed. A pale, sickly gas began flooding the room. "Shit, he's gassing us," Hannah shouted, frantically scanning for a way out. Thomas ran to the glass barrier separating them from the children, slamming his fists against it. Emma's eyes fluttered open, widening in fear. "Thomason, hang on, kid, I'm getting you out of here." He scanned the room. There, a security panel to the right of the glass door. But before he could act, boom, an explosion tore through the back wall. Thomas and Hannah spun around. The steel door had been blown off its hinges. And standing in the wreckage, Sheriff Dante Lawson. He wasn't alone. Behind him, an entire SWAT team stormed in, rifles raised, lasers trained on Sloan and his men. "Game's over, Doctor," Lawson growled. Sloan didn't flinch. He smirked. "You really think it's that easy?" He pressed a button on his wristwatch. Instantly, the heart monitors connected to the children began blaring. He had rigged them. If anyone moved the kids, a bioweapon would be released into their bodies. The entire room froze. Lawson's grip on his rifle tightened. Sloan stepped backward toward a door leading to the helipad. A black helicopter was waiting. "We'll meet again, gentlemen," Sloan taunted. He climbed aboard. Bang! A gunshot cracked through the night. Sloan staggered. His hand clutched his chest as blood soaked through his white coat. Hannah stood, gun raised, smoke curling from the barrel of her Glock. "There won't be a next time." The helicopter jerked as the pilot panicked, lifting off without its intended passenger. Thomas rushed to the control panel. One shot. The screen went dark. The security override had worked. The bioweapons were disabled. Emma let out a sob as Thomas reached her, his arms wrapping tightly around her. They had won. But Thomas knew this war wasn't over. As the SWAT team secured the area, Hannah and Lawson checked each child, ensuring they were stable. Sloan's blood pooled beneath him, his breath shallow as he lay abandoned on the helipad. But even in defeat, he smiled. "You think this stops here?" he whispered. Lawson knelt beside him, his jaw clenched. "Yeah, I do." And with that, the nightmare of Dr. Sloan ended. But in the darkness beyond, The real war had only just begun. Thomas rushed to the control panel, desperately trying to disable the detonation system. A single beep, and the warning lights shut off. The children were safe. Emma burst into tears the moment she saw Thomas, throwing herself into his arms. The battle had been won. But the darkness hadn't been erased entirely. Sloane's blood stained the floor of the helicopter as it spun away, disappearing into the night. The rotor wash kicked up dust and debris, mixing with the thick stench of antiseptic and rusted metal. This fight was over, but Thomas knew the war was far from finished. Lawson ordered the SWAT team to sweep every inch of the facility. Hannah meticulously checked each child, ensuring the deadly toxin system had been completely deactivated. Emma clung tightly to Thomas's shirt, her wide eyes still filled with fear. "They won't stop, Uncle Thomas. I know they won't." Thomas gently stroked her hair, but instead of reassuring her, his chest tightened with unease. Emma was right. The darkness wasn't gone yet. Lawson stepped forward, his expression grim. "We've cleared the entire facility. No survivors except for the hired guns. But there's a problem." Thomas frowned. "What kind of problem?" Lawson lifted a blood-stained file, flipping it open. Inside was a detailed list of patients, children, who had already been processed. They've been running this for years, and Sloane was just a pawn. There's someone else, the one pulling the strings, the real mastermind. Hannah pulled out another document, her face going pale. "We were right, they have a full list of buyers, people who purchased organs from these kids, and the name at the very top. Silas Whitmore, the billionaire philanthropist, the man hailed for his monumental contributions to medical advancements." Thomas clenched his fists. "Whitmore Medical is the nerve center of this entire operation." Anna nodded grimly. "He's not just a benefactor, he's the one placing the orders. He's planning another surgery." Thomas's voice was low, tense. "What kind of surgery?" Hannah swallowed hard. "A heart transplant. From another child." Whitmore Medical sat in the heart of the city, a gleaming skyscraper that never went dark, bustling with hundreds of doctors, nurses, and patients. No one knew that beneath its pristine exterior, horrific surgeries were taking place in hidden operating rooms. And now, they needed a new heart. They needed another child. Lawson slammed his fist against the table. "If we're taking Whitmore down, we need solid proof. He's too powerful, and if we screw this up, we'll all be dead before this even hits the news." Thomas gripped the pistol on his hip. "I don't need more proof. I just need a shot at him." Anna shook her head. "It won't be that easy, Thomas. If we're going to expose Whitmore, we have to get inside his hospital first, without tipping them off." Lawson's eyes narrowed as an idea formed. "Wait. There's someone who can get us in." Thomas turned to him. Lawson gestured toward Emma. Aging desperately, most of the doctors at the facility helped Emma escape. She's still working at Whitmore Medical. Thomas looked at Emma. The girl's eyes flickered with recognition. "You remember her?" "Dr. Sophia Monroe." Thomas exhaled. "Then that's our way in." The infiltration. To breach Whitmore Medical undetected, Hannah and Lawson devised a plan. Thomas would go in as an injured patient. Hannah sat behind the wheel of a stolen ambulance, a surgical mask covering most of her face. "I hate this plan," Thomas grumbled, adjusting the hospital gown he was wearing. His arm was bandaged, faking an injury from a car accident. "I think it's kind of fun," Hannah said flatly, then hit the gas. Whitmore Medical loomed ahead, its massive glass doors reflecting the city lights. As the ambulance pulled up to the emergency entrance, 2 paramedics rushed out. "What happened?" one of them asked. "Car wreck, head trauma, needs immediate attention," Hannah said, her voice firm, professional. The paramedics nodded. "Room 3, go." Hannah wheeled Thomas inside, then quickly turned back, pretending to leave. In reality, she slipped away into the parking lot, where Lawson was waiting with an earpiece. "You've got 30 minutes, Lawson muttered. "If you're not out by then, I'm coming in." Yeah, Hannah whispered. "Let's just try not to die." Inside, Thomas was placed in a stark white room. Moments later, a doctor stepped in. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Thomas looked up. She had blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and an expression that was calm but carried a hint of concern. Her name tag read, Dr. Sophia Monroe. Thomas had found his way in. "Dr. Monroe," he whispered. Her eyes widened slightly before she quickly masked her reaction. "Who are you?" "A friend of Emma's." She stiffened. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she quietly locked the door. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I don't have a choice," Thomas said. "We know what Whitmore is planning. We need proof, and we need your help." Dr. Monroe took a deep breath. "I can't give you proof," she murmured, "but I can show you the truth." She pulled open a drawer and took out a classified file. Thomas opened it, and his heart stopped. Hundreds of photographs of children, surgical scars, missing organs. And among them, Dr. Monroe's voice was low, urgent. "We have to leave, now." Before Thomas could react, wham! The door slammed open. 3 men in black suits stormed in, guns drawn. "Mr. Whitmore would like to see you both." Thomas gritted his teeth. They knew. And now, the final battle had begun. Thomas and Dr. Monroe stood quartered in the hospital's sterile white room. "Mr. Whitmore would like to see you," one of the guards repeated. Thomas glanced at Monroe. She wasn't surprised, just furious. "What if we say no?" Thomas asked coolly. "You don't have that option." As soon as the words left the guard's mouth, Thomas attacked. He lunged forward, flipping a tray of scalpels and syringes into the air. The distraction was all he needed. In a blur of motion, he grabbed the closest guard's wrist, twisted hard, and snapped it. The gun clattered to the floor. Before the man could scream, Thomas drove his elbow into his face, knocking him out cold. The second guard raised his gun. Boom! A fireball erupted. Dr. Monroe had kicked over an oxygen tank, triggering a small explosion. Smoke filled the room, alarms blared. The last guard panicked, yanking up his weapon. But Thomas was faster. He dove, grabbed the fallen gun, and fired 2 shots into the man's knees. The guard collapsed, screaming. Dr. Monroe grabbed Thomas's wrist. "We have to move, now." The 2 of them bolted into the hallway as hospital staff screamed in confusion. Then, the elevator doors slid open. 5 more guards stepped out, weapons raised. Thomas cursed under his breath. "We're out of time," Monroe whispered. But before the guards could fire, boom, the lobby doors exploded. And through the smoke, Hannah and Lawson stormed in, guns blazing. "Thomas, get down," Lawson bellowed. Thomas hit the floor just as gunfire erupted. The final fight for Whitmore Medical had begun. The glass doors of the hospital lobby exploded. Hannah and Lawson stormed in, leading a fully armed SWAT team. "Thomas, get down," Lawson shouted. Without hesitation, Thomas grabbed Monroe and pulled her to the floor. Gunfire tore through the air. Lawson's team opened fire, dropping 3 guards instantly. The remaining 2 tried to escape, but they didn't make it far. Hannah took them down with 2 precise shots. Police officers swarmed the hospital, securing the area. All right, Monroe panted. "We have to stop Whitmore. He's still in the executive suite." The truth comes out. The elevator carried Thomas's team to the top floor of Whitmore Medical, the executive office. As the doors slid open, they found Silas Whitmore standing calmly in the center of his grand office. Dressed in a tailored suit, a glass of red wine in hand, he flashed a slow, smug smile. "Ha, you finally made it," he said smoothly, setting his drink down. "I have to admit, I'm impressed." Lawson leveled his gun at him. It's over, Whitmore. Whitmore chuckled. Over? Do you really think arresting me will change anything? I'm just a small part of something much bigger. The people out there won't let you destroy what we've built. Thomas stepped forward, his expression ice cold. Your entire operation has been exposed. We have all the evidence we need. Hannah held up a USB drive. Every illegal procedure, every victim, every client. There's no talking your way out of this. Whitmore shook his head, still eerily calm. Oh, I know. But there's one thing you forgot. Boom! A massive explosion rocked the building. From deep below, a chain of detonations erupted, shaking the very foundation of the hospital. Son of a bitch, Hannah yelled, struggling to stay balanced. Whitmore smirked. No evidence, no case. I may go to prison for a while, but I'll be out soon enough. And when I am, this system will still be standing. Thomas's grip tightened on his gun, but before he could pull the trigger, Lawson fired first. Bang! A bullet tore through Whitmore's shoulder, making him stumble. You're not going anywhere, Lawson growled. Sirens wailed outside, helicopters circled above, FBI agents stormed the building, rounding up every remaining member of Whitmore's network. As Whitmore was shoved into handcuffs, his face drained of color. But Thomas knew, even though they had cut off the head of the snake, many more were still hiding in the shadows. Emma, the other children, everyone who had suffered deserved true justice. That night, Thomas stood on the hospital rooftop looking out over the city. Hannah stepped up beside him. "We won," she said quietly. "But is it really over?" Thomas didn't answer right away, because deep down he already knew the truth. "No," he murmured, "but I'm not stopping." Boom! The entire building shook as a blast of heat and debris surged through the halls. "Damn it!" Hannah shouted. "He's trying to destroy the last of the evidence." Whitmore lunged for a switch on his desk. A hidden door slid open behind him. "See you around," he sneered, then disappeared into a secret passage. "After him," Lawson roared. Thomas, Hannah, and Monroe sprinted into the tunnel. The passage led to an underground parking garage. At the far end, a black helicopter sat waiting. Whitmore climbed aboard, grinning. "Give it up, Thomas. You can't stop this." Thomas tightened his grip on his gun. "He's getting away," Monroe shouted. "No, he's not," Hannah muttered. She raised her rifle. Bang! A bullet ripped through the helicopter's engine. Flames erupted from the tail rotor. The aircraft jerked violently, alarms blaring. Whitmore's smug expression twisted into panic. "You people have no idea. This network is bigger than anything you can imagine," he spat. Lawson stepped forward, voice like steel. "Then let's see how much control you have from a prison cell." Whitmore let out a furious snarl, but there was nothing left he could do. 2 minutes later, federal agents swarmed in and dragged him away in handcuffs. The hunt was finally over. The media was in a frenzy, with every major network running stories on the Whitmore Medical scandal. A global black market organ trade had been fully exposed, leading to hundreds of high-profile arrests. The system had collapsed. Thomas sat on the porch of a small country house, watching Emma play with a golden retriever puppy. Lawson strolled up beside him, sighing. "You sure you're staying out here?" Thomas nodded. "Yeah, I'm done running." Lawson raised a brow. "With the kid?" Thomas glanced at Emma, then back at him. "She's lost everything, but from now on, she doesn't have to run either." Lawson chuckled, clapping him on the back. "Good luck, Thomas. You just signed up for a whole new kind of life." Thomas smiled faintly. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and gold, the wind rustling through the trees, carrying the soft laughter of a little girl. He leaned back in his chair, taking it all in. Lawson folded his arms, gazing out over the open fields. "You really gonna settle down?" Thomas shrugged. "I used to think I was just a trucker." always on the move, never stopping. But now, I think I finally found my place. Lawson nodded slowly. You know, raising a kid like Emma isn't going to be easy. Thomas watched Emma closely. I know, but nothing in life comes easy, Lawson. If I can pull one kid out of the darkness, maybe that's the best thing I'll ever do. Lawson was quiet for a long moment. Then he patted Thomas's shoulder. You're a good man. Not many would step up the way you have. Thomas just smiled, because deep down he knew Lawson was right. He had never imagined himself becoming a guardian, a father. But when he looked at Emma, when he saw how fiercely she had fought to survive, he understood. His life had changed forever. But just as Thomas allowed himself to think it was over, a sudden chill crawled down his spine. Lawson must have felt it too. A strange, uneasy silence settled over them. Then his phone vibrated. A new message, no sender. You think this is over? Don't be naive. We're just getting started. You really think you've won? This network is bigger than you can imagine. The girl will never be safe. Lawson's grip tightened around his phone, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He turned to Thomas, only to see him staring at his own phone. An identical message. Thomas slowly stood up, his eyes turning ice-cold. He glanced toward Emma, still laughing, carefree, oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. Lawson exhaled sharply. They're not done. Thomas clenched his fists. No. A storm was coming, and this time, he wouldn't let them get another chance. Life often throws unexpected challenges our way, testing our resilience and our willingness to stand up for what is right. Thomas's story teaches us that courage isn't just about fighting battles. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It reminds us to trust our instincts, to question what seems off, and to never assume that evil only exists in the shadows. Justice is not served by silence. It takes action, persistence, and sacrifice. In a world where power can be abused and corruption can hide behind respectability, it's up to those with integrity to expose the truth. This lesson applies to all of us, whether in our daily interactions or in moments of crisis. If we see injustice, we must speak up. If we see someone vulnerable, we must step forward. Because sometimes, the difference between life and death is one person's decision to do the right thing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. Share this video with your friends and leave a comment. We want to know what you think. Check out the other videos on the channel for more inspiring and exciting stories.